Good morning and welcome to Moments with Melinda. I am your host, Melinda Moulton. It's a beautiful sunny day in Vermont. And as my guest, I have Brenna Galdenzi with me today. She is the president and co-founder of Protect Our Wildlife. Brenna, thanks so much for being with me today.
Thank you for having me. You always bring such energy and light to what sometimes can be a very dark place in wildlife advocacy. So thank you, Melinda.
Well, thank you so much for sitting with me. You and I have crossed paths quite often over the last 3 or 4 years in your work. And you have been known on social media as Brenna Angel. And so talk a little bit about that, about your name.
Great question. So Angel is a truncated version of my maiden name, which is Angelillo. And sadly, the nature of politics or activism these days is that things can get very hot, very contentious, and sometimes dangerous for people who are on the front lines advocating for these issues. So I changed my name on social media as an alias to Brenna Angel to try to offer myself some kind of protection. But then it got really confusing because we had wonderful wildlife advocates writing to me in Stowe, writing, "Dear Brenna Angel." And so I went ahead and I changed it now parenthetically to Galdenzi. So I'm putting myself out there.
You're
I'm
put,
not fooling anybody.
you are putting yourself out there, and I agree with you. It is contentious. And we're going to talk a little bit about that today and get to the meat of it. No pun intended. But so let's start at the beginning. Talk a little bit about your childhood.
Oh, wow. Um, I've always been an advocate for the underdog, had always a real sense of needing things to be fair and equitable, um, and really, again, advocating for whether it was people or the elderly or animals, especially, um, that I felt really had no voice, or they actually have voices, but that aren't heard or don't have a fair seat at the table. So to say that this work has been a lifelong process would be accurate.
So did you grow up in Vermont? Were you raised in Vermont?
I am a flatlander, a proud flatlander. Yeah. That's one of the more tame pejorative terms thrown at me. I was born in Hartford, Connecticut, and moved to Vermont in 2010 due to a job change. And so I've been here in Stowe ever since. And it's been eye-opening in good ways and in not so good ways.
Well, you've made quite a splash for only being here for 15 years, Brenna. No, seriously.
Yeah.
And so who do you think in your past has had the greatest impact on your direction in your life to devote your whole career and your whole life to protecting wildlife? Who was your greatest inspiration?
Oh boy. I don't know that it was any one person. I think it has more to do with images and content that I came across when I first moved to Vermont that really opened my eyes as to some of the legal recreational activities that are enjoyed by a subset of sports persons. So I think that's what really got me on this course. And if you've heard this before, I apologize, but I'm assuming those watching probably haven't heard it. But I was volunteering for Green Mountain Animal Defenders. They've been around since the 1980s. That's where I first kind of got into this work as a volunteer. And I was going through their volunteer manual, and I was flipping through pages. That's when everything was in, binders and workbooks. And I came across a photo of a beautiful bobcat looking into the camera with just such fear in his or her eyes. And the bobcat was in the snow, and it was a pattering of blood in the snow, and there was a device kind of clamped down on the animal's paw. And I did not know what I was looking at the time. And I asked the person who was mentoring me, "What am I looking at here?" I hope a game warden was contacted because this surely was animal abuse. This must be illegal. And I was told that no, this is what a leg hold trap looks like. This is a legal activity in Vermont where people trap bobcats and foxes and a whole host of other animals termed fur bearer species. And it was really eye opening. And so when you ask what kind of set me on this path, it was that visceral imagery. And it wasn't only the animal being caught in the trap, it was that somebody actually thought to take a photo and relished in this animal's very clear suffering and fear. That also made me very concerned as to how people can enjoy watching an animal in prolonged suffering like that. So that's
So,
the honor.
but you're an activist, and and also you're a sensitive, kind-hearted, caring person about wildlife. And then on the other side, there's humans who don't see eye to eye with that. What sets you apart from them? I understand that it's seeing the bobcat, but you've got something inside you that's really powerful
Hmm.
to grow up and be an adult advocate
Hmm.
of Vermont's wildlife in a state that is not, that is really one of the top pro hunting and, states in the country. So talk to me a little bit about I mean, was there, as a child, did you have a grandparent or someone who sort of put you on this path to care about those that are underserved in the wild kingdom?
These are good questions, and they're tough questions. I haven't been asked these questions in a while. Um, the arenas that I'm in right now, again, can be very intimidating. And I think my childhood, honestly, I grew up in a very loud, male dominated Italian family with a lot of very strong male voices that could be scary, yelling a lot and just a lot of very, yeah, strong male presence. And so I don't shirk from that. And thankfully, in a lot of these contentious arenas, it is easy to feel intimidated. It is easy to kind of feel like, oh, threatened. But I thrive in those tense situations because of my childhood, growing up around a table of very, very, again, loud, very opinionated, um,
Fierce.
fierce.
Brenna, you're fierce. You are fierce. And with that fierceness, I want to talk about the organization, Protect Our Wildlife. To my viewers, I encourage you to go to www.protectourwildlife.org, all spelled out, where you can donate, join their mailing list, and learn about their programs, values, goals, and legislation. Go onto that website and check it out. I'm going to mention a few more times during this interview. But you're a co-founder and the president. So talk to us a little bit about that spinoff, and what inspired you to create this incredible organization.
So I really enjoyed my time at Green Mountain Animal Defenders. I learned so much. I met a lot of the people that I'm friends with now through Green Mountain Animal Defenders. I left there to start Protect Our Wildlife because Green Mountain Animal Defenders, they focus on such a wide range of animal issues, from farmed animals, animals used in experimentation, importance of spay neuter. Wildlife was only a small aspect of what they did. And given the gravity of what I was seeing, I really felt that there needed to be an organization in Vermont solely dedicated to protecting wildlife because there really wasn't one. So I started Protect Our Wildlife with two other women in 2015. One of them moved to DC, so we lost her as a board member, unfortunately. But the organization has really grown. We have 7 board members, advisory board members, a very well-rounded board, wildlife rehabilitator, attorney, um, all different conservation biologists, all different voices at the table, helping to form decisions that can be very difficult and also having to make decisions on a dime sometimes. So it's not just me. There's a whole board, an advisory board, and also trusted coalition members that we defer to a lot.
How many members are members of Protect Our Wildlife?
We're a non-membership organization, so we base it on how many people we have on our mailing list, our subscribers,
Okay.
and it's about 4,000.
Wow.
And there's a lot of competing interests right now, especially right now with the national stage. So getting people to sign up to get your action alerts, it's hard. And so we're really proud that we've grown that organic list. We don't buy lists from other organizations. It was all clipboards and, really grassroots work.
And
To
social media and all, and you've gotten a lot of press. I mean, there's, anyone who Googles, protect our wildlife in your name, Brenna Galdenzi, they will see a lot that's been written up about you. So this organization is very specific to Vermont. Have you ever considered taking it national and making it a national organization?
We've been asked to do that. I would love to. We are all volunteers though, and as it is now, I really have no social life running this organization. Mainly, I'm able to do this full time as a volunteer. I'm very grateful to be able to do that.
So
I would
you don't get paid for being the president for the work you do?
not a dime. No, I don't.
My
I don't
God.
reimburse myself for mileage. No, nothing. I worked in the financial industry for a very long time in Hartford, Connecticut, and always have spent my money very wisely, and due to my super pragmatic nature. And so I'm grateful I'm able to do this right now and not having to take money. Yeah.
So your keywords are protect, respect, affect for Protect Our Wildlife for this organization. Talk to us a little bit about that.
So the effect part is really emblematic of who we are, because the effect is what we can do. How are we actually affecting the nature of wildlife protection in Vermont? So that's really what we focus on. I mean, protecting, respecting, surely, but how do we affect that change? And we really try to arm people with very simple, actionable steps they can take to be effective.
Yeah, it's so great. Again, to my viewers, protectourwildlife.org. Please go and visit the website. It's a fascinating website. So much information on it. So, Brenna, how do we encourage humanity to embrace wildlife and not be frightened by it? I mean, we hear so many humans despairing wildlife and waging war upon the creatures who have the same rights to be here as we do. I hear it all the time with, for instance, I'm going to give you an example with coyotes. It was like, oh yeah, my dog, worried about my dog getting eaten by coyotes. I got to get out my gun. I mean, how do we encourage humanity to embrace wildlife and not be frightened by it?
I think most people would choose coexistence. I think a lot of people really enjoy seeing wildlife. I think that there is a lot of fear mongering, a lot of misinformation, disinformation about coyotes. We really have tried to lean heavily on Vermont Fish and Wildlife Department to host more educational events, more information on their social media to try to get at that culture of just demonization by some of these magnificent animals who share DNA with domestic dogs. And the fact that they're so poorly treated in Vermont and really across the country is really surprising. And I think there needs to be a lot of education. We've done some of it, but the state really needs to step up and realize that coyotes have a real PR problem. And a lot of it has to do with humans oftentimes not acting responsibly. So,
Well, the same with fisher cats. I mean, you've taken on the protection of fisher cats, and we've all been, you know, taught that fisher cats, they were brought to this country to rid us of porcupines. And I have a couple that live up in my woods, but what do you have to say about that movement that you're focused on right now, is the protection of fisher cats? How are they getting killed?
boy, I could talk to you for hours. I'm going to try to stay really focused. It's hard to not go off on tangents. So rein me in if I.
Oh,
So
well,
so fish they're a vital predator species in Vermont and across the country because they prey on small mammals, rodents that can carry disease. They're recreationally trapped for the entire month of December. When I say recreationally, I don't say that to be flippant. There is no biological imperative to be trapping and killing fisher. So it's a recreational opportunity for trappers. We know in Vermont that according to two fairly recent studies, 100% of fisher that were tested showed up positive for rodenticide poisoning. So we know that fisher in Vermont, they're being poisoned by consuming mice and rats that ate poison bait, exited the bait boxes, and then died out in the woods somewhere, and the fisher eats them. So there really needs to be a moratorium on the fisher trapping season until we really get a handle on what's going on with these animals. I mean, so many animals right now are being poisoned by rodenticide, bobcats included. So yeah, I mean, we see them often on our trail cameras. Our property is perfect for fisher. The terrain and a lot of tree snags, and I enjoy seeing them. I have got dogs and cats. Never had a problem with the fisher. Never had a problem with coyotes. We haven't seen any bobcats, sadly. But I
I,
think it's
I had a close encounter. Well, my husband did with a fisher, which I sent the story to Ranger Rick. This was many, many years ago. And we had heard this screaming in the woods, and we ran up, and there was a baby doe that the fisher had clamped onto. And my husband and the fisher did not want to let go. And Rick picked up a stick and sort of flared it, and they kind of had a go-to at it. Eventually he dropped the doe and the little baby deer.
yeah.
And it ran into my arms, and the fisher took off. And I called Audubon, and they said, well, just walk away from it, stay close, but the mother will come back. She knows where it is. And it did. But that's the way the world goes, right? That's the way the world goes. And
Yeah, I have such utmost respect for these animals who are making their living and surviving in a world that is not at all friendly to them. It's easy for us to open up our fridges and eat. These animals, every time they go to take down prey, like that fisher taking down the fawn, those animals, they put their lives in danger every time because one kick by a deer could break a coyote's back. It's a very harsh
but they're
living out there.
trying to survive, and we got that. I mean, we understood that.
Yep.
And yeah, it's I hear you. I hear you. So thank you for that. Thank you for that insight. So you were interviewed by the New York Times in March of 2024, and it focused on Vermont's laws around wildlife and protect our wildlife's efforts to change the laws to be more wildlife friendly. So talk to us about Vermont's legislation, and talk about the board that oversees hunters, trappers, and anglers, and how all of this in the article, it was so great how it ties into democracy.
Wow. This is where I can get really wonky.
Okay, go for it.
So the legislature, will continue to have wildlife protection matters legislation at their doorstep until we can figure out until we can establish a wildlife governance system that works for the people of Vermont and not just trappers, hunters, and anglers, right? So we have a Fish and Wildlife Board made up of 14 people, all volunteers representing each county. There's only one member on that board that does not hunt, trap, or fish. So the board, really is the regulating themselves, basically. And your good friend, I believe, Kate Webb, she created legislation, so grateful for her, a long time ago, regarding wildlife being a public trust resource. So wildlife is not owned by anyone. It's held in trust by the state for the people of Vermont. But we have a Fish and Wildlife Board who makes public policy on how many otters may be trapped, if there's a moose hunting season, all kinds of things that impact all of us. But the only people that are making this public policy are 14 uncredentialed volunteer board members who represent a very, very small fraction of the Vermont public. And they've held this power forever. And S-258 was a bill that sought to democratize the Fish and Wildlife Board, promote inclusion, diversity, just bringing different voices to the table. And what we often see in this movement is that the sportsmen, lobbyists who work for sportsmen, created some narrative about this is an attack on hunting, and it's not. This is about how do we start talking together? How do we start sitting at a table where there's equity and all different values are represented, so we can start sharing ideas in a fair and balanced place? Because I have to say, in all my years being at the State House, when I do talk to a hunter or a trapper in the halls at the State House, It has largely been fairly tame. When you're talking face to face with people versus, online, and I always walk away learning something, and I hope they walk away learning something too. And that is what a more diversified board could offer Vermonters, the ability to bring these different people together.
Well, S 285 passed in the Senate, right?
Yep, S-258.
50 passed.
So grateful for legislative champions on the
I'm gonna
Senate
reach out
side.
to Kate. I just spent a couple weeks with her and, um,
Yeah.
that was such a coup. So there is a gap between wildlife policy and state governments and the views of the American people. I can't, I'm gonna get into that in a second, but I want to talk a little bit about trapping. I was a close friend and colleague of Iris Muggenthaler, who was a leader in the ban the leg hold trap movement back in the day. And I thought she was going to get it passed, but she has since passed. But you have taken up the torch. So, what's the big deal? Ban this cruel mechanism that tortures animals. What's the big deal?
I, again, could speak for hours about this. You know how much I respect Iris. I was grateful enough or lucky enough to meet her about 2 years before she passed. I went out to Wake Robin, where she was living at the time. And she was another force. I mean, she was an unapologetic force for good. She went there at the State House, bullied by, the orange clad camo wearing folks. And she was wonderful. And I think if you were to poll most Vermonters, I would bet that the large majority oppose leg hold traps. What has happened and what continues to happen is that you have lobbyists who are engaging in a disinformation campaign that if they ban leg hold traps, they're going to ban deer hunting next. And it's the slippery slope argument that a lot of folks use, NRA folks, different platforms to try and drum up support for an otherwise really objectionable activity. So that's why is that we have people who are just engaging in these disinformation campaigns. No, very few people support leg hold traps.
It's true because this whole thing about it was a mutualist perspective that Vermont really majority of Vermonters, and we can get into that, but what inspires someone to want to go out and put a creature in a leg hold trap and watch them suffer? I mean, what kind of humanity is that we're living in? Because they're not using them for food. They're not using them to clothe themselves. It's just why? I mean, what's the purpose of it?
I have spoken with trappers and I have read a lot of trapping rhetoric on forums. There is really an intolerance for certain species like bobcats, coyotes, fisher, foxes that a lot of trappers and hunters view as competition over animals they want to hunt and kill themselves. So, for instance, bobcats, they prey on turkey, they prey on hare. They're viewed as competition. Well, we don't want those bobcats killing all of the turkey poults. We don't want the raccoons eating the turkey poult eggs because, those are animals that they want to hunt and trap. So that really is now they've gotten very clever. Now they're saying, oh, well, we eat bobcats. No, you don't. So now they know that people tend to support an activity when people are doing it for sustenance. So
Right.
they very cleverly now change the narrative. But based on what I'm seeing in some of these closed forums and speaking with trappers candidly, they just have an intolerance for predator and mesopredator species that they don't like on the landscape because they're competition over prey species.
Yeah,
That really
but who wants too many of the other? I mean, it's the balance of power.
exactly.
So then talk about this mutualist perspective that the public attitudes towards wildlife in the study found that Vermonters hold a mutualist perspective. What is that?
This is you and I are like this because I didn't know any of these questions obviously before the discussion, and this is something I wanted to talk about, and I never thought you would bring up this topic, and you did. So you are just
Well, that's my job.
yeah, you're good. Anyway, so there was a Colorado State University study done in Vermont to gauge people's values toward wildlife, and it's broken down between mutualist, traditionalist, pluralist, and distanced. Mutualist meaning people who want to coexist, people who want better wildlife protections. And the highest percentage of Vermonters, I'm reading off the study, hold a mutualistic perspective. Then the second is pluralist, and pluralist means that your attitudes can change based on the context. So do I not want a skunk in my backyard? No, I don't, but I do want skunks out in nature. So pluralist is a bit more nuanced. And then the second to last value held is traditionalist. And that's a kind of dominion attitude over wildlife. They're here for me. They're here for my consumption. They're here for my extraction. So yeah, Vermont, the majority or the highest percentage of people hold a mutualistic perspective. So there you go. This is the Colorado State University study that was done.
Well,
And so
isn't that hopeful? That's hopeful. Right?
it's very hopeful. And I think we would have a lot more. And we just saw this recently with the bill we're working on, H132, to ban hunting over bait piles. If we could just debate the issue, right? If we could just do that and not instead be confronted with these slippery slope arguments that get everybody all kind of fired up. But they know that it's sometimes effective when you can mislead the public and have the public think that we have some nefarious agenda, when our agenda has always been very clear. Yep. We do not oppose deer hunting. In fact, deer can overbrowse. They can destroy habitat. People largely eat deer. There was a deer hunter who testified with us yesterday in support of H132. So,
well, I also want to congratulate you on the passing of H636, and it was the second state in the country, and this bill banned coyote killing contests. I mean, I'm sorry, but that was just an incredible accomplishment, and so congratulations on that.
Thank you. Yeah, and we paved the way for other states to do the same, and now we need to bolster our law, because our law really should ban all killing contests. When I think about what that's doing to especially young men who are growing up hunting, what a horrible way to indoctrinate them into the hunting culture by having them kill as many squirrels or raccoons for prizes, and that's what happens.
Oh, it's just really. So our legislature is aware of changing the way Vermont looks at our wildlife. I believe that they're aware of it. How are they doing?
I think there's a lot of competing interests right now. Again, especially with what's happening nationally. I think people are just so fried, they're frazzled, I just really hope that they will start seeing that there is a tremendous surge of Vermonters who want better protections, not just for animals, but for wildlife. When we think about, some of the most underrepresented constituents are animals. I mean, they have every right to be here. We're infringing on their habitat. We're doing horrible things to them. And I mean, so I think in order to be a compassionate legislator, also need to extend that compassion toward, these other sentient beings, animals.
Absolutely. And I want to give a shout out to Kate Webb for the work she did in the legislature, and also to Esther Lotz for the work she did. I mean, somebody can find a mouse that, she takes and I got to tell you, there are these angels that in our state who are just doing great work, and you are one of them.
Well, thank you.
So you have had some amazing wins on behalf of our state's wildlife. What is your greatest and most satisfying win?
I probably banning the coyote killing contests. Also, we fought a trapper's request to extend the otter trapping season and bobcat trapping season back in 2016. We were able to defeat extending the bobcat trapping season. We brought together 100 people in Woodbury out in some lodge where there was a board meeting being held. And so that really galvanized the movement. Every time trappers or hound hunters try to liberalize their activities, extend seasons, increase bag limits, it only grows our movement. And that was really a galvanizing moment for us. We came together and we fought something, and we will continue to do that. So it's not just about advancing pro-wildlife legislation. It's about fighting any dangerous legislation or rulemaking through the board. We will do that, and we will continue to grow every time there's a threat to wildlife.
Well, please consider me one of your warriors in this battle.
You are. Oh, you absolutely are.
So that's about the end of our time, Brenna, and I want to thank you for your work on behalf of Vermont's beautiful and sacred wildlife. And again, to my folks who are listening, please visit www.protectourwildlife.org and get involved. It's really, really important. So I hope you do that. And Brenna, I wish you a beautiful day. And I'm going to keep following your work and advocating for what you're doing. And truly, you're a Vermont treasure. Thank you so much for being with me today.
You are too. Thank you, Melinda.
Thank you. And to my viewers, what a beautiful sunny day we have today. I know this is going to be shown quite a bit, so maybe it won't be when you watch it, but boy, today, what a gorgeous day we've got. Well, listen, I want to thank you all for joining me today, and I wish you a beautiful, beautiful rest of your day. Thank you. Bye-bye.